welcome to Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins, your host, and I'm so excited today. This is the start of the NFL season. It starts on Thursday, and I know just because you're here, you're a good church person, and you may not care about that, but it's a big deal in my house, and it's a big deal in the Saenz household. And today, I'm super excited to have Bishop Ruben Saenz and Isaac Saenz here with us to talk about not just the kickoff of the NFL season, but this intersectionality that happens in the midst of sports and faith. But before we get to that, I think we should spend a little time saying why on earth you're here to talk about sports and faith coming together. The faith part's pretty obvious, right? But Isaac, can you share with us a little bit about who you are and what you do kind of on an average day when you're not hanging out in the closet at the conference office shooting a podcast?
Yeah, so I'm Isaac Saenz. Once again, I appreciate the introduction. But yeah, so what I do basically is I cover the NFL, independent reporter, NFL insider, work with a lot of players, interview players, agents, marketing reps, and really just cover the sport at length, in depth on the podcast during the season. It's week to week, break down matchups, take a look at injuries, who's hurt, who's playing. Fantasy football is massive, right? So that's something that a lot of followers on social media are constantly looking at. And so for me, it's just having a good time, trying to make sure that I'm getting the most accurate news out there, contacting agents, making sure that the teams and the players, even players that are free agents or no longer playing in the NFL, they want to try to get a little bit of a taste of the media space. So I bring them on. J.J. Wilcox, former Dallas Cowboy. I had him on the podcast every week. And so it's just about growing the network, having a good time covering the NFL, and most importantly, trying to be as engaged with fans, followers, just making sure that we're having a good time, man, because opening kickoff is right around the corner. I want to make sure everybody's well informed.
What an incredible gift it is to be able to do that, right? And you don't mess around with this. We spent some time this week listening to the podcast and engaging with your social media channels. You got a couple 100,000 followers on Instagram, a couple 100,000 followers on Facebook. Podcast is a huge deal. You talk about, I saw J.J. Wilcox. I'm like, I know that guy, or I don't know that guy. You know that guy. Right. But, as a Cowboys fan for most of my adult life, I remember him roaming in the defensive backfield there, right? For a good 4 or 5 years. So tell us, how long has sports been a huge passion for you? This is not something you just decide, I'm going to be an NFL insider today, right? It's something that's been a part of you for a while, and I'd imagine it took a journey to kind of build you to this point.
Exactly. Well, my father, growing up in a sports family, and football has always been the number one sport. I mean, he played at SFA, Axum Jacks, and growing up with two older brothers, and who are 6'6", 6'7", they played the game as well. And so for me, I always had that passion for sports. When I was a young kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, I would watch games, and there's pictures of me and Ruben, the middle brother, the middle child. He's not the favorite like me, but anyways,
not everybody can be.
We would go out there. He would dress me up in a cowboy uniform, pads, helmet, and he would pretend that he was my coach, and we would go out there and play fantasy games, thinking that, hey, we're playing this team. And so I started. My passion and love for football started at that age. When I was 4, 5, 6 years old, and even though I was never a great football player, I was never, an elite or a 5-star blue chip, right? But I still learned the intricacies of the game, the what it takes, the training and the regimen, and looking up to my dad as well and my two older brothers. And so I knew that I wanted to get in the sports world somehow, some way. And so broadcasting was something that I was like, I want to be behind the mic talking sports. And so NFL has always been my number one avenue. And so coming out of middle school and high school, and then as I got ready to come to college here at UT Arlington, I knew that I wanted to have a voice, especially in the NFL. And so I really just worked at it, made some connections, and here we are.
Very good. Now, Bishop, football has been your game for a long, long time.
Although I have a baseball jersey on today, but you know what? It's sports.
But you're supporting the Rangers, right? And this is an important time in the Ranger season too.
World Series champs.
There we go. We're making an aspirational dream here, right? That's the vision we're casting for their season and things. You played college football, right? You've shared some about that with us in the past, but what is your relationship to the game of football today? We know Maya, and I'm assuming. Isaac, you're a big Cowboys fan because you wouldn't be welcome at home if you weren't, right? But Bishop, are you a huge fan of any individual team, or are you kind of just an appreciator of the sport, or what's your connection to football and sports generally these days?
Having played the sport, I appreciate the athleticism of these players.
Yeah.
These players can do things that we never imagined. The speed, the strength, the scheming that goes on. It's so complex and so far beyond even 10 years ago. So I enjoy the game for the game itself. Of course, I coached football also.
Okay.
So I look at techniques and I look at stuff like that. So I am a fan, although it's hard to be a fan,
right.
When your team doesn't win. But I've tried to be as objective as I can.
Yeah.
And but when the Cowboy season launches, Maya, and if Isaac is at home, then her and Maya are on a different level.
Okay.
And I might go to the other room to watch the game in peace, right? Or raise the channel to see who else is playing.
Yeah.
But these two together, they're just, it's an experience.
It's a peak experience.
Well, because I had wondered, day in, day out covering the thing, right? Sometimes,
and
your passion and your profession come together. Do you still keep that fandom at the same way, or do you have to live in a more analytical space?
Well, first off, I always like to mess with him because I say he's the ultimate bandwagon fan.
I'm not a bandwagon. I go for teams when they're winning.
He'll start going with the Chiefs and Mahomes, or with
Kansas.
the Eagles.
He did live in Kansas.
When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
And so he will play that bandwagon.
I love all teams, all NFL teams.
But at the end of the day, we know he's a Cowboy fan. But he's right. I mean, the wavelength between him and my mom. And me and my mom, we're on another level. But to answer your question, I mean, covering the sport, interviewing players, because I do know many players that play in the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys rivalry, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Giants. And so, separately, I'll tell them, hey, man, good luck. But deep down when they play the Cowboys,
I'm rooting for you, but not for your team,
exactly.
right? Yeah, make that distinction.
It's one of those things where I'll tell them, hey, I hope you have a great week. But then in the back of my mind, I was like, it would be a good time for you to put up a stinker against the Dallas Cowboys. So it's a little bit one of those 50-50. But no, my Cowboy fandom comes first when they're playing, for sure.
I'll confess, NFL, I've always been a Cowboys fan, but kind of a little more. I mean, post '96, we haven't had as much to cheer about in recent decades. But college football is my thing.
That's it.
And so as long as you don't ever wear the maroon and white of Texas A&M, we're all good. just don't go whoop.
Go big red.
Yeah.
Nebraska Cornhusker fan.
Okay. Very good. I have some trauma from childhood from Baylor playing Nebraska. It's like a 69-0 game at homecoming one year.
Hey, I met Tommy Osborne when I was in Nebraska.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he signed. Isaac has been a Nebraska Cornhusker fan since he was young. Also,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think because his brother. Right.
Yeah, Ruben was a big Longhorn fan. So when they're in the Big 12, they play each other, and to get under his skin, I'd go for the Huskers.
There you go.
And it stuck. So now, ever since I've been a little boy, I have all this Nebraska gear that has been stacked up. He got me a very nice signed helmet by Tom Osborne.
I met Tommy Osborne.
Nice.
And he's a Methodist at St. Mark's in Lincoln.
Very
United
good.
Methodist. And so he signed a helmet that I got for Isaac, and it was Philippians 4:13, right? 4:8. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so he quoted that, and he signed his name. So that helmet is up on Isaac's shelf in San Antonio.
I bet you didn't expect that to happen when he was elected to the episcopacy.
I did not.
Right?
I did not. And unfortunately, during the time, that they were there in Nebraska football program has not been where it has been in the 90s, just much like the Cowboys.
Sure.
Since I was born, there has not been a lot of success in Nebraska or Dallas. So we're trying to reverse the trend.
I will say, Matt Rule was the coach at Baylor for a number of years.
Yes.
And so I think you will enjoy the Matt Rule experience at Nebraska.
Yes.
But and you'll have to talk to Bishop Wilson about getting another signed helmet. I don't know if Matt Rule's a Methodist or not, but, we might could work somebody. Somebody's got to know somebody there in Lincoln, right? As you can tell, sports elicit a passion within us, right?
Yeah,
and I think it's fascinating that like football and worship primarily happen on Sundays, and both are things that can stir our deepest passion, get us really kind connected and, sometimes in more boisterous ways than others, right? Right. Although sometimes worship moves us to a boisterous space.
Right, it should.
Yeah.
Somebody said if we go to church, right, we should wear helmets and shoulder pads expecting to be encountered by the living God. And so we just can't go into church, like, it's just business as usual. It's not business as usual.
Yeah.
When we're in the presence of God, are we prepared for that encounter? And so,
Be ready.
Be ready.
That's awesome. When you guys think about those intersections, right? Being ready is one of them, right? But what commonalities do you see between the life of faith and kind of its expression and the way it brings people together, the way communities form around it, to the way our passion for our favorite sports franchise, whether it's the Rangers or a college team or the Cowboys or somewhere in between, the way that brings people together? What kind of commonalities do you see there?
I'll let you start.
I think, and it's interesting because when you go to church on Sunday, and sometimes I have to come to that realization, is there's excitement on Sundays. It's NFL football, and we could sit down and watch games for 3.5 hours and not have a problem. But there comes to be an issue sometimes when we don't necessarily feel like going an hour to church because it's like, hey, there's NFL football. But I think you're right. I mean, there's got to be that same commitment, I think even more commitment to going to church than there is watching a football game, as hard as it is sometimes internally, because you just, I really want to go watch the game. But I like that point with, bring the shoulder pads and helmet, because I feel like if we are so passionate about football and sports and we can sit there for 3-4 hours and we're going to do it every week, and there's football Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where's that same craze?
And Mondays.
And Monday nights.
Right.
Where's that same craze for service? And where's that same energy and passion for church? And so I think that's something that internally, us as Christians and intertwining the two, faith and church and football, is finding ways to stay engaged and motivated, and also say, hey, this should take priority over football on a Sunday. And we have to learn that we have to feed ourselves spiritually, and making sure that we're staying grounded first and foremost, while also using that same hype for NFL Sunday, but somehow interjecting it into Sunday worship. And so if we can have that type of fire and passion, we got to bring that first, because church is the main course on Sundays, or it should be. And then football comes after as, course 4, if you want to have
it's the dessert.
It's the dessert. That's what the cherry on top. But for me, I think that's how I've always viewed it. And growing up in the church with my dad, especially on Sundays preaching, we're always going to Sunday school. So we've been at church from 7 a.m. all the way to 1 p.m. because we're the last ones out the door. And so Sundays...
Because of your mother.
Yes. And my mom, of course...
Stop everybody at the door.
Holding up the line of 300 people is going to definitely make it a 2-hour thing after service, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting part of it, is how can you hook people at church to get them as excited about it and not looking at the watch like, well, it's almost.
I was about to say, 3.5 hour football game and a 20-minute sermon. Sometimes for some people feel like they last just as long as each other. Like, oh, is he almost done? Is he almost done? Okay, sweet Jesus, thank you.
Or checking off the Cowboys schedule, like, well, this is a noon game, so we got to make sure we're out of here fast.
I was about to say, I need you to talk to your NFL insiders. They've had the Cowboys playing right during prime time, like 4 o'clock games on Christmas Eve, the last 2 years. Last year they played it, and this upcoming year they're playing at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve, messing with everybody around here's mojo for Christmas Eve worship services. So if you've got Jerry on your speed dial, can you talk to them about that? Because it's really messing with our mojo. Although I guess it works for the 11 o'clock. Everybody just come real late and it's all good. But Bishop, what do you see when you see those kind of intersectionalities?
So much, and like you say, it oozes out of me. I mean, for one of the things that is for me was important about football was it's a team sport, so it gathers people from all different walks of life, all different communities, and you come together to create a team with the purpose of winning. You never play a game expecting to lose,
right?
And you never start a season expecting to lose. The goal is you win the championship, right? I mean, that's kind of like what you work for. That's what you start in January to work for. But I met people that I would never have associated with in my real life but they were now part of the team, and then to coalesce a team. So much of the sport is the execution of the individual players, right?
Sure.
But it's got to be coordinated, and it's got to be purposeful so that we can accomplish, a goal and move and score and, and hold the other part. And so then you have one side that's doing their part, the other side's doing their part, then you have the special teams. And so everybody, although they have unique function, has an important role and is part of the whole.
Yeah.
And so, and for me, the coalesce an annual conference and to help it feel as a team, as one, as opposed to a lot of rugged individuals out there doing their own thing or playing their own sheet of music. How do we harmonize and harness all of our giftedness to accomplish something that is great and grand, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about whenever a trophy is lifted at a championship, I mean, the hardware probably costs maybe $1,000.
Right.
But it symbolizes all of the work, all of the hours, all of the training, all of the sacrifice, all of the planning, the strategic, the adjustments, the personnel trades, the years of development, and it all culminates in that symbol, and that's why it's so hard to articulate, because it is a sum total of so much that has gone into it, the blood, sweat, and the tears.
And it's not accomplishable without everybody.
It's not.
Yeah.
And so for me, I mean, as a church, what is our trophy hoisting moment when we can say, look at what we've done as a denomination, right?
Yeah.
It's all of us doing that, our little
our
part.
own little part. Well, and as you were describing the role of the defense, the offense, the special teams, I had the vision of the offensive line, right? You got five. That's a subset of 5 guys, right? But if your left tackle blows it, the quarterback's getting sacked, right?
Yeah.
Or if the center messes the snap up, it doesn't matter if the other 4 guys block perfectly. It messes. It doesn't live into its fullness.
But at the same time, you have to. So offensive line, I had to have knowledge of what was happening. I knew where the back was going. I knew where the quarterback's going to be at. I knew what that guy was going to do. So I had to have some kind of working knowledge of the whole, not just me.
Yeah.
Right.
You had your unique part, but you were connected to the whole.
Exactly.
So it seems like Paul said something about that, like in the body of Christ, in
exactly.
1 Corinthians 12 or something,
like,
right?
Yeah, Romans and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He got into the sports metaphors a lot.
Well, but and I feel like you named, right, how sometimes on the football field, right, you ended up connecting with people who you wouldn't be connected to in real life otherwise.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times church has been the thing that has brought people across socioeconomic divides, across language divides, across racial divides, across missional divides, across communities, right, that brings people together and becomes the thing that says, in these days, across the political divide, right?
Exactly.
Like the United Methodist Church is one of the beautiful places where Republicans and Democrats gather together on purpose.
We are the church of George Bush and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. And what a powerful reminder and image that is, right?
Yeah.
Because we serve Christ, who is bigger and more important than any and all of that, right?
Real quick.
Yeah.
Speaking of the connection of Sunday and football, brief story. My dad went back in 2009.
Okay.
Nebraska was playing the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma Sooners, and they were playing at the AT&T Stadium here in Arlington, and it just opened, and the game was on a Saturday night, and so we left Edinburgh. We're living in the Valley at the time, and we left like at 5 a.m, made that long trip, and so we had some church members that we knew that lived here in the area, and so after the game,
Armando Alvarado.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They were
That was
like,
a grapevine.
They're like, come after the game, stay at our house, and we'll get some breakfast in the morning.
For Sunday morning,
because it was a Saturday night game, and so we go to the game. Unfortunately, Nebraska got off to a great start. They ended up losing OU, but it was the memory. We had a great time, and so by the time we got out of the parking lot, traffic, it was 11, almost midnight. We got into their house, and so I'm like, man, we're tired. Great day. And so next thing you know, I fall asleep. I get to the bed.
Probably after 12:30 or 1 o'clock.
Yeah, 12:30, 1 o'clock. And the next thing you know, I hear my dad tapping my shoulder. Let's go. Let's get up. And I'm like, what do you mean let's get up? I look at the clock. It's 2 or 3 in the morning. And he said, let's go. I got to get back for Sunday worship. And he already had plans, for an associate to preach. But he was like, no, this Sundays is our game day. It's important, and I do not want to miss a Sunday, even if it means us leaving at 2 a.m. and it was 30, 40
500
degrees.
miles.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And he didn't really sleep. And so he said, I'm not going to miss a Sunday. And so the significance, that's when it really hit me like, wow, he's really doing this, driving, what was it, 8 hours both ways or 9 hours?
500 miles, it was about 8.5 hours.
Yeah. And so at
500 miles up and 500 miles back.
at 2 or 3 in the morning, having, he was that wired to say, no, I don't want to miss an opportunity at the pulpit, because what happens if there's a new family and that's my chance? If I'm not there, I miss out on that chance to connect somebody into faith.
Yeah.
And so that's when I said, man, that's real. Like that's what you want to do. And so really funny. My mom calls us at like 6 or 7 in the morning. Hey, are you having breakfast? And my dad's like, no, I actually need you to bring my robe. We're already in Falfurias. And she was like, what? Had a panic attack.
The worst case scenario, right?
Yeah. And so, and it just goes to show you, like on Sundays when you're a football team, your head coach, you want to make sure you're putting a good product out there every Sunday. And so kind of learning from my dad, he was always of that mindset. He's like, I got to be on my A game on Sundays because I don't know who's going to walk through that door, and I don't want to miss an opportunity. Yeah. I've been able to get somebody hooked into church or tied into our community. And so that's really when that relevance of Sunday was like, okay, now I get it. Like this is something different.
Well, it's funny as you name that. I not only see that in him, but I also see like that weekend is an exemplification of priorities. He drove 9 hours so you could watch a football game.
Right.
And then drove 9 hours back to make sure that he was there for church, right? And so that's for you and for the Church of Jesus, right? And that kind of combination of these are things that are critically important to me. Right. You talk about being up for game day, right? I love Adam Hamilton's phrase, right, on Preachers for Sunday, saying, you better be excited to be here, right? Yeah. You better have energy to be here. And if you need to drink a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and a 2-pound bag of Skittles to get there, do it. Because if you don't have energy, who's going to have energy, right? This is meaningful. It's important. We got to be, if we're not excited and ready for this, who's going to be excited and ready for it?
Yeah. And the thing is, driven by the gratitude for what Christ has done for us.
Yeah.
It's not a me thing.
Right.
It's a Christ thing. And I wanted, my dream was to take him to go see Nebraska-Cornhusker game. And I figured that Lincoln was a little bit too far from Edinburgh, Texas. Right. But when they got to Dallas, I said, that's doable.
We can get there.
We can get there and back. It's just so much perseverance, overcoming obstacles. You get injured, right? And then you got to recover and put yourself back in the game. I blew out my knee at the beginning of my junior year. Okay. And my scholarship was on the line. I said, if I don't get back in the starting line, I might get cut. And if I get cut, there goes my school scholarship. And so I had to work myself, recondition myself to get back in. And I got back in by the 7th week, but I maintained my scholarship, which enabled me to finish school and then, get my education and move on. But I played with pain. And it was like, this is what you got to do to get the work done. And it's a mindset. And I bring that mindset to ministry. Because for me, this is not a game. Yeah. This is serious. And we're involved in the greatest enterprise in the history of humanity. And so I take what I do extremely serious. And sometimes I don't have a lot of patience for excuses. Okay. Yeah. Because I guess I don't like to make excuses. I just find a way to get it done. Because, that's my responsibility, and I assume ownership and responsibility for that. And, what I do and what Christ enables me to do is a call, but it's also it's a responsibility, but I want to leave things better than what I found them. And so I take that really, really seriously. And so and I'm grateful that I have people around me that feel the same way about it, because if we're not passionate about it, then it's just a job. Right. And I don't have a job. No. We don't have a job. We have a calling, we have a vocation, we have a purpose. And so
well, and that vocation, that purpose may have moments where things don't go exactly according to plan. Exactly. Right.
So you got to scrub it instead of throwing the pass. You got to run it instead of running. You got to throw the pass, but you got to figure out a way to score.
Right. Well, and
and win.
It's hilarious. One of the joys of being in ministry, right? You named, you bounced around, right? You got moved at many different places, but because before you were a bishop, you were a pastor, right?
That's right.
And that's what I love about our system, right? As you find yourself in the cabinet room making those appointments, you know what it's like to uproot family. You know what it's like to move and things. Yeah. At each step along the way, I've always had a football coach in my congregations, right? And one of the things that is said, at least among Texas high school football coaches, is there's two types of coaches. Those who have been fired and those who will be fired. Right? There's only two types of coaches, right? And it's probably true in the NFL too, right? Those who have been fired and those who will be fired. Essentially, those who will have to uproot life, maybe face some adversity, shift things. Things don't always go according to plan. And yet, the purpose still remains.
Exactly.
Right? And the same is true for us as people of faith, right? As leaders in the community of faith, right? Most of our viewership and folks at this point is good old church people, right? Whether they're pastors or lay leaders and different folks along the way. And we've come out of a season where we wouldn't have chosen the way things have gone the last 18 months, right?
It is what it is, and it's our responsibility to figure out a way how to get through it.
Right.
And not just get through it, but thrive despite it.
And I think we're in the midst of doing that.
Yeah, of course we are.
Absolutely. What has been the thing that, as you have kind of grown to invest more and more of your life in this football world, Isaac, that has kind of come to the fore that maybe, you said this has been a passion since middle school and high school, right? Each step along the way, right? I grew up thinking, man, I'm going to be on SportsCenter someday. That's going to be fun and cool. And then God whacked me on the back of the head and it went a different way, right? But what is it about your day-to-day today that may be different than you expected it to be, but that you've kind of persevered? I mean, where does this idea of perseverance connect in for you in the midst of, what the last 5 to 7 years have looked like in terms of building what you have today?
Yeah, I think when it boils down to it, it's all of, you think about reporting on NFL or sports broadcasting, and you just think of getting behind a mic and talking. But what a lot of people don't realize, and this goes really hand in hand in ministry, is it all starts with connections. It's relationship building. Mm-hmm. Without relationship building, you're not going to go very far. And that doesn't just go in sports. It goes in ministry. That's a big one, obviously. If you're not connecting, if you're not taking the time to invest in other people and sharing a mutual respect with one another, then how do you expect to go places? I mean, you look at the podcast, and I've interviewed 200-300 players the last several years, but as easy as I wish it was, or just say, I'm going to interview Dak Prescott, or I'm going to interview Ezekiel Elliott, it's like, no, you have to find a starting point. You have to first find that entry level, get your foot in the door. Maybe it's going to be smaller players, and that's what I did, interviewing smaller college prospects coming out of school that wanted to get to the NFL. I knew their chances were probably unlikely, but I said, you know what? If I'm not going to give a voice to these underdogs, I kind of resemble with that underdog nature is like, hey, I don't always have the expectation of being, the top person in my class. I was always the smallest in football when I transferred to Reagan, always the lowest in my grades at high school, always chasing my friends. And so I resemble that. Like, hey, there's that desire, there's a passion, you want to get somewhere. And so I've always shared that same sentiment with these players. And so without that relationship, starting, building with those players first, gaining their respect, and not doing it just because I want to say, oh, yeah, look, I'm doing it. No, but being genuine about it and saying, hey, how are you doing? Let's follow up on your workout with the Falcons. How did it go? And so without that investment and all the hours that I've really put in on networking with these players and agents and really showing them that I don't just care to get them on my podcast for 20 minutes, but no, it's a genuine like, hey, man, how are you doing? Like, how are you mentally? Yeah. And for me, it's been about reaching out to players who suffer season-ending injuries. It's like, how are you doing mentally? Jason Verrett played at TCU. Yeah. All Big 12 corner. Drafted in the first round of the Chargers, suffering an Achilles tear, ACL tear, back-to-back seasons. Niners, he signs with them, suffers injuries again in training camp. And so I interviewed him, and so I have his phone number. And so I check on him periodically, like, hey, man, how you doing? How's your knee? How's your mental health? And so the players they really like, wow, like this guy's actually gonna check on me. He's not just using me to get, followers and stuff like that. And so you asked me about how that has kind of changed on a day-to-day basis. I really realized that without that type of communication and without that relationship building, same goes for our church community. It's like you can't expect people to walk through those doors if you're not investing the time and showing them that you genuinely care about them.
Yeah. It's the podcaster's version of pastoral care, right?
Exactly. That's his community.
Yeah, and that's the ministry of all Christians, right?
That's the ministry of all Christians.
I love, we're going to get Methodist nerd here for a second. Is that okay?
Go for it.
In the book of discipline, right? The ministry of the ordained is a subset under the ministry of all Christians, right? And so all of us whose lives have been claimed by Christ, all of us who have submitted ourselves in baptism and confession of faith, have the responsibility and the opportunity to care for our neighbor, whether they're former first-round picks who've had 3 straight catastrophic injuries, or the neighbor who lives next door to us or in our community, or the kids in our local schools. We have that opportunity and the invitation to invest deeply and relationally, because we never know how God's going to use that relationship, right? We never know what's going to come from it, right? We would all love to snap our fingers and have 200,000 followers on Instagram for your Pro Football Chase, right, podcast. It doesn't happen that way, right?
No.
It's a build over time, and people trust you, and then you're able to work with them and work alongside them, and it's not a, as you name, right? You're checking on him after he's not like good publication for your podcast anymore. He's just a human you have claimed as one of your humans that you will care for as somebody who follows Jesus. And I think that's instructive when we talk about the spirituality of all of our work, right? We're going to move from football to work here for a second, right? But no matter what we do, we have the opportunity to be that interconnected place and space for the humans around us. And I think that's a powerful gift. Thank you for doing that. On behalf of people who love sports and often miss the individuals in the midst of the collective game.
Yeah, because it's crazy, people are very quick to bash players, and like as fans, it's like, oh, this guy's never healthy. But it's like when you really talk with them and you hear their stories, it's a whole different level. It's that personal level that kind of helps connect things, and it really puts it into perspective. Like, wait a second, these guys just aren't players who are winning me fantasy games.
Right.
They have lives. They have humans. Speaking with JJ, he's got a family now, and he's like, man, I gotta stay busy. My kids are in school, and I'm trying to make sure I'm paying my bills. I'm a free agent, and I'm still training 6 hours a day, hoping to get a look. People don't understand that these athletes are putting in that type of time. You can just say, JJ, oh, that guy he's useless now. Nobody's signing him, but little do you know that guy is training 6 hours a day as a 32-year-old trying to come back from an Achilles tear, trying to get one call to get in for a free agent visit, and sometimes it doesn't come, right? And so that's the other part of the game that, I see my dad, and you clergy, you're constantly checking in on people. You're going to visit people. You're showing your respects, and as you said, it's such a vital part of growing is personal relationships. If people don't feel like they're being cared for, why are they going to show up on a Sunday? And so I think it all goes hand in hand.
This has been so good, and I think we've got enough on the bone here for like 3 or 4 more podcasts. We should probably just keep it rolling and crank out 5 or 6 in a row here. But I will ask that. Isaac, anytime you're up here in DFW, hop on. We'll make sure Bishop's calendar coordinates, because this has just been an incredible gift to me, and I hope a gift to everybody who encounters this. As we wrap up, I've got one highly important question for you.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see it.
So, with $100 million on the line.
$100 million.
Okay. Are you blocking Aaron Donald?
Oh, man.
Aaron Donald. Are you catching a Hail Mary over Sauce Gardner? Or are you tackling Saquon Barkley?
For how much?
For $100 million, which are you trying? Blocking Aaron Donald, catching a Hail Mary over Sauce Gardner, or tackling Saquon Barkley?
I think I'd go with a Hail Mary over Sauce Gardner.
Okay.
Because I think that doesn't require the physical contact and the trauma that I suffer trying to tackle Saquon or block, So, yeah, I definitely try to go with the Hail Mary over Gardner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bishop, how about you? Which one you picking?
I think I'm going to go against...
And money full in service of the mission of Jesus Christ, of course.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go blocking Sam
Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, because
he can only generate so much force from here to here.
Yes. When my first day of practice at Stephen F., right?
Yeah.
There was 130 of us, and we had to whittle it down to 53.
Okay.
So the idea was you got to get rid of 75 guys that don't have it, right? I mean, and you're going to work 3 days, 3 times a day, and have guys quit, self-select to quit. And then those that are there, then they get cut. So I was not going to go home and give an excuse as to why I didn't make the team. So the first day of practice, right, the coaches called us together, and we have the offensive lineman on one side, the defensive lineman on the other side, and he says, the offensive line coach says, I need a volunteer. I said, well, I was a freshman, right, scared to death. I said, me? I said, get in here. What's your name? Sanchez? And of course, it's signs, right? But, when we had tape with her name, it says, get in there. Defensive coach looks at me and he says, Ron, get up here. And so all of a sudden, I see this mass of people just split, right, like the Red Sea. And here comes Ron. I didn't know Ron ran a 4.6. I didn't know he benched 500 pounds. I didn't know he was going to play for the New England Patriots. I didn't know he was all conference. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a senior, right? He's just, so I got down. But I knew that I was maybe physically outmatched.
Right.
And so I decided to go a little bit early on the snap count to catch him off guard. So I hit him with all the 235 pounds in me that I could. At that time, that's what an offensive lineman weighed. And he was about 270, 280. Well, I hit him, and then it just, nothing was moving. Yeah. All of a sudden, I felt myself being picked up off my feet and then put on my back. And he gets his forearm, and he claws me on the face mask, and he says, stay down, rookie. And I had a decision to make at that time.
Right.
Was I going to pack my bags and go home and tell everybody that I quit? Or was I going to get up and go again?
Yeah.
And so my whole life flashed before me. I said, well, if you get off of me, I'm like, let's have at it again. Yeah. And so we went the second time. Okay. And the same thing happened. Yeah. I said, well, get off of me, let's go at it again. And the coach said, that's enough, Sanchez. What's your name? I said, it's Saenz. I said, okay. Well, I made the starting team my freshman year. I was one of 2 freshmen that made it. Yeah. But in that moment, you have a decision to make. Are you going to quit and meet everybody's expectations? Or are you going to just find a way to make it? And I think in ministry, sometimes you get put on your back. The question is, you going to get up, or are you just going to quit? And so, and I, so much of that is just part of, who we are. And Paul says, character and perseverance and hope. It's about character. It's about our perseverance, and it's about the hope that we have. It just helps us to keep on getting up and say, we're not going home. We're here, we belong, we have a purpose, we have a mission. This is why I'm here. So,
we just gave a preacher a microphone, and he started preaching. Thank you for joining us today on Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins. Until next time, we'll see you soon. That was wonderful. Thank you guys so much.